Hey everyone, welcome back to Expansive Astrology. My name is Melissa O'Malley, the Self-Care Witch, and this is Aquarius season, week 3. This week we're talking all about honoring authenticity and stepping into your self with a capital S, finding your authentic individual self, really stepping into that shamelessly. Um, for the good of the whole planet. This is part of Aquarius's whole mission. And the more we can embrace our authenticity, the better we're able to show up in the full force of our power, which is the other part of Aquarius's mission, right? To honor our authentic self in order to serve the collective. That's what Aquarius is all about. This is for the good of the planet. Healing yourself for the good of the planet. Embracing your uniqueness for the good of the planet. Aquarius is the water bearer. It's an air sign, right? But it's the water bearer. Part of the whole mission is to bring life to the collective. And how can we do that if we're not deeply in tune with what our water pot is made of? So let's hop into it. To embrace who and what we are with confidence, like this takes work for most people. This takes a lot of work. It isn't always easy to show up authentically. There's endless reasons this may feel or be really challenging or even unsafe sometimes, right? But the more congruent we can be, the closer we get to true shamelessness about the essence of who we are, the better. This allows us to grow in confidence, to show up more fully in our relationships, to advocate for ourselves and others more effectively. It allows us to honor our uniqueness and to bring our strengths and our gifts to the world. So let's talk about genuineness. Genuineness means being your actual self, right? Without facade, openly and willingly experiencing all the feelings and attitudes that are flowing within you at every given moment. And we'll talk a little bit more about facades later on in this video. But genuineness involves mega self-awareness, right? Allowing your feelings to be available to you and being able to live them and experience them and communicate them. Again, this is for the good of the planet. This is crucial work. And it's very self-focused. It might feel really selfish, but the it's for the good of the planet. Like the purpose, the whole point, something that feel so passionately about is that the more each individual person can really step into our power and really embrace who and what we are, the whole world benefits from you embracing who and what you are. And this is also really important to me because if you didn't know, I don't know how you wouldn't know, but if you didn't know, I'm a therapist. I have my master's in clinical counseling, and my man Carl Rogers is all about this. My therapy style is considered pretty person-centered, client-centered therapy. And this is also considered Rogerian, sometimes people call it, because my man Carl Rogers, like my therapy daddy, I'm just kidding, I should not. I take it back. Fuck, I'm just kidding. But he really influenced and pioneered the person-centered therapy. And what person-centered therapy is all about is these 3 things: authenticity, empathy, and acceptance, right? And he really emphasized that anytime, and I'm sure many of you can relate with this, anytime you're wondering what your therapist is thinking, it's just awful, right? Because our brain fills in the blanks, and usually it ain't pretty. um, Being authentic and genuine is something that we can feel, right? And as a therapist, you want to be as authentic and genuine and congruent as possible, because this increases your trustworthiness. If you, if your therapist is annoyed with you, but not saying that, or skeptical of something that you're bringing to the table, or having some sort of off attitude about you, you can feel it, right? And it's very uncomfortable, and that's like terrible. It's terrible for a productive therapeutic interaction, right? If you feel like your therapist is annoyed by you or disliking you for some reason, that feels awful. It's terrible. But if your therapist says, like, if your therapist discloses those things in a way that is gentle and empathetic, and like still values you as a person, right? There's a way to go about this that's not so helpful or not so kind, right? But if a therapist um, gently and kindly says, like, I'm not so sure about that, or I think you're being a little um, facetious, or I think your expectations are a little too high, right? Like, that's what we value in therapy, is that kind of honesty. And um, the more authentic, empathetic, and congruent a therapist is, the more trustworthy they are. A therapist doesn't gain trust by um, like just automatically, or just by keeping appointments, or by being using a million techniques, right? Like, that can be really uncomfortable. The therapist gains trust by being trustworthy, by being transparent, by um, um, like tactfully not holding things back. And so long story short, that's why this is so important to me. And authenticity has been very important to me for a very long time. And I think, whether you're a therapist or not, adopting authenticity, genuineness, and some of these other qualities that Carl Rogers spoke so highly about, or worked so passionately with, um, can help all of us, therapist or not. So Carl Rogers said, it is not simple to achieve such a reality. Being real involves the difficult task of being acquainted with the flow of experiencing going on within oneself, a flow marked especially by complexity and continuous change. So part of the goal, in order to reach authenticity, we have to really have heightened awareness, like deep awareness, full awareness of our own complexity and continuous change. So genuineness has two sides. There's an inner one and an outer one. Those are congruence and transparency. And in fact, an incongruent therapist is considered dangerous. So we're talking about being congruent within your, like, insight with yourself. Whatever is coming up for you is also what you're showing. And then there's the transparency, where, like, you're allowing yourself to be seen. And congruence, being congruent with, like, what's going on inside and what you're showing outside, that means that you won't always be likable or predictable or even pleasant, right? Because whatever is going on inside is not always likable or pleasant or predictable. We are always experiencing complex and continuous change in this wild human experience, right? Like, things are always changing. We're always evolving and adjusting. Our opinion might change moment to moment or day to day. And when we're congruent, and when what we're showing to the outside is congruent with what is happening inside, that means you won't always be likable, predictable, or pleasant. Can you be okay with that? Can you be okay with not always being likable, predictable, or pleasant? Because when you're congruent, this means that you will be trustworthy and you will be honoring the depth of your human experience. Are you willing to be seen as you are? Even if how you are in that moment is ignorant or embarrassed or vulnerable in some way. Are you willing to be seen as you are? Before we talk more about authenticity, let's talk about how to increase that self awareness of that complex and continuously changing flow that we're always experiencing. Um, Increasing self awareness is like the first step, right? We have to be aware of what's going on in order to be congruent in our expression of that. So, things like mindfulness, like mega mindfulness. And I don't just mean like I am sitting in the chair and it smells kind of musty in here. And I see six colors around me and I'm feeling a little anxious. Like I don't mean like that type of mindfulness. And I don't mean like meditation, though meditation is on my list of ways to increase your self-awareness. I mean mindfulness like I'm walking in the door and feeling irritated at my partner because um, uh, here I think an example that I've used in the past that I realized like pretty early on in my relationship, I would come home from work and my partner would be like cleaning up the kitchen or cooking dinner or something, and I would be irritated with him, the poor thing, and I would be aware of this irritation, but it took a while before I was really mindful of where the irritation was coming from, and it was kind of silly. I would feel I had this narrative of like irritation that he didn't start cleaning until he knew I was about to come home. And for some reason, that made me irritable. Um, Maybe I felt like I didn't deserve him cleaning just because I was coming home. Like I wanted him to clean because he wanted to clean, but why wasn't him, why wasn't it enough that he wanted to have the kitchen clean for me? It's because I didn't feel deserving of it. I hope that makes sense. I hope that makes sense, not necessary to get into. But I mean mindfulness of like those things, mindfulness of what your reaction is and why. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was irritated, not because the kitchen was getting cleaned, but because I didn't feel deserving of him cleaning the kitchen just for my sake. I hope that makes sense. Mega mindfulness, mindfulness of what is coming up for you and why, and really owning your shit. Like it wasn't anything he was doing. He was cleaning the kitchen for me and making dinner. It's beautiful. It's wonderful. Don't change. Like I want him to keep doing that, right? But I was coming home and feeling irritated, and it took a while, and it took some work with mindfulness to understand that like this was all my shit. It was all me feeling undeserving. So mindfulness, awareness. Mindfulness helps increase your self-awareness. They're really like um, married to each other, right? Mindfulness and self-awareness. Things like learning your birth chart, your natal chart, the Myers-Briggs um, assessment, enneagrams, those sorts of like personality tests, BuzzFeed's quiz on which grilled cheese you are. Just kidding. But those sorts of personality inventories can kind of help just increase who you are and where you're coming from. Once I learned that I'm Scorpio rising, uh, that helped me understand further, like who I am and how I show up, right? Once I understood that my Pisces or my moon is in Pisces, I was like, oh, that explains a lot. A lot of why I'm crying all the time. Now, those sorts of quizzes, the Enneagram, your birth chart, those sorts of things can start to kind of paint a picture for you, but they're not the end all be all, right? So, like, take those with a grain of salt, a little tiny grain of salt. Journaling or If writing isn't your style, talking out loud to yourself, that might sound kind of crazy, but talking out loud to yourself, filming yourself talking and then listening to it back, or journaling and reading it back, can really help increase your self awareness. Things will, I'm sure of it, I can say this with confidence. If you do those things, things will come up for you, um, that you weren't quite aware of, that you weren't fully in tune with or aware of. Uh, I personally really enjoy like talking to my phone, and then if I need to, like listening to it back, because hearing yourself talk about what's going on for you like puts it in a whole new perspective. Also, talking to a therapist or a coach can really help you increase your self-awareness. Work on observing our feelings and reactions and assumptions and patterns without necessarily trying to fix them or avoid them, right? But really taking the role of observer and um, just noticing. Oh, isn't that funny that every time I get home, even though my partner's doing something nice for me, I experience this irritation? What is that about? Really taking an observer role can help you tease it apart. I like the analogy of um, like picturing the news reporters in the helicopter who are uh, looking down on a crime scene or a car chase. They have a totally different vantage point than the cops who are engaged in the car chase, right, or the crime scene or whatever. Um, Sometimes you got to get off the street and get up into the helicopter and kind of look down on what's happening. Taking the observer role, notice your thoughts, notice what's happening without attaching to them or without believing they are true with a capital T. Not all of your thoughts are true, right? Um, and realizing that you are not your thoughts. They come and they go, and the better we are at allowing them to flow and to come and to go without attaching to them, the more free we are. So another recommendation, a little tip that I always recommend is getting in the practice of saying, my brain is inviting me to believe, fill in the blank. My brain is inviting me to feel, kind of detaching the feeling or the thought from yourself, and acknowledging that it's kind of more just like a um, result of brain chemistry. It's just brain. It's just the brain trying to keep you safe. It's just the brain trying to make sense of what's going on. My brain is inviting me to believe that my partner's only doing this um, for my sake, and he is annoyed by having to do it or whatever else might be there, right? He wasn't annoyed by having to clean the kitchen. He wanted to clean the kitchen for me. Otherwise, he wouldn't be doing it. I want to invite you to really allow and accept and honor what arises for you. That complex and ever changing flow of feelings and beliefs and thoughts and assumptions. Allow them to be. Allow, accept, and honor what comes up for you. Again, without attaching too much to these thoughts or feelings or beliefs, without having to fix them or understand them. And just being aware of the flow. The flow, flow, flow. Flow is a key word this week. Pay attention to what bothers you about other people. This is often a reflection of what we don't like in ourselves. The things that we really dislike in other people are often a reflection of the things that we don't like in ourselves. And that's a bitter pill to swallow sometimes. So pay attention to what bothers you about others, because that'll increase your self-awareness about what you might be showing up with that you're not so fond of. And a bonus to this one is it helps us have compassion for other people. I'm trying to think of an example. Vanity, I think, comes up for me. Um, Sometimes I'll catch myself being like, oh, they are so vain. They're clearly so vain, so self obsessed. And I have to take a minute and be like, okay, I'm not all that different. Um, I don't, I'm like turned off to this other person's vanity because I don't like seeing it in myself. I don't like when it arises in myself. And noticing that helps me have more compassion for the person who I was judging so harshly a moment ago. I hope that makes sense. Notice what makes you feel defensive. When do you pull out your sword, your metaphorical sword and shield to protect yourself? And why? Why are you feeling so defensive? Why are you feeling the need to really protect yourself against whatever's going on? Again, just like mega mindfulness about what's coming up for you and what your reactions are and where that truly comes from, what the root of it is, and owning it, owning the roots. None of this bullshit of he made me mad and he made me defensive and no, we're owning our shit. We're owning our shit these days. No more of that. No, next is to know clearly, have a very clear idea of what your values are and what your priorities are, because this just helps, first of all, give us a roadmap for how you want to show up in your life. What you truly value and prioritize gives you almost a cheat sheet or a key of how to proceed in any given scenario, right? Authenticity is one of my number one values. So anytime I'm feeling stuck, I can kind of return to that and reflect on what would be the most authentic move. And I go from there. Um, this also gives you some clues into what offends you and why. Um, yeah, if I feel like my authenticity is being challenged, or if I feel like somebody is approaching me in an unauthentic way, uh, that might make me feel really defensive. Um, know clearly what you do on autopilot. What do you distract yourself from? What are the things that you engage autopilot with? What are you trying to escape from that exists inside of you? Um, a little more on that later when we're talking about facades. Also, notice your impact on others, right? Ask for feedback from others, or if that doesn't feel safe or like it would be helpful or honest from the other person, be careful about your assumptions, but notice your impact on other people. If you're telling a story and it seems like other people are kind of zoning out, like be careful about the assumptions you make about that, but also like just notice it again as the helicopter news reporter. Just observe, like uh seems like I might be monopolizing the conversation a little bit and other people are tuning out. Or seems like I'm telling a story and other people aren't really engaged with me. Maybe these people aren't my people. Right? Be careful about the assumptions you make. Like you don't want to say, seems like other people are tuning out my story. So I'm stupid and they hate me and I'm never going to make friends. Be really careful. Be really gentle with yourself. I think of like a big eureka moment I had in therapy several years ago. We would have um, like movie nights with friends, and I'm very comfortable being a wallflower. But I realized in therapy that while all my other friends would be congregated in the kitchen, I was more comfortable to be behind the bar. Um, yeah, I was literally in a different room, but like still able to interact, right? There wasn't a wall between us, but there was a bar between us. Um, and I would go to therapy and I'd say, I just don't get it. I don't understand why I don't feel very close to these people. I can tell that they like me. They still invite me to movie nights every Tuesday or whatever. And yeah, I don't feel very connected with any of them. And I took that helicopter observer role and I saw that I was keeping myself behind the bar. Um, and again, I was more comfortable there, which is great. But I had these assumptions that I don't know that our the friendship wasn't true, that I didn't actually belong, and I was keeping myself behind the bar. Long story short, be careful about your assumptions. It wasn't that they didn't like me or that they were trying to, um, is disinclude a word? I want to know right this second. Disinclude? Not a word, but you know what I mean. They weren't trying to, what would that word be that I'm looking for? They weren't trying to ostracize me. And they did enjoy my company. I was doing it to myself. And it was really easy to fill in the blanks and make assumptions that I was just too weird. I was the weird girl. Um, and that they didn't like me for whatever reason. Uh, but really, I was keeping myself really quiet. I don't know if you heard that, but there's a crazy noise outside. I was keeping myself separate from others. Um, and the assumptions that I drew from that were not helpful for me, right? Until I really um, just observed, right? And was more mindful of how I was impacting my relationships. I had control over how much contributed to the conversations. I had control over where I stood in these scenarios. And if what felt most authentic to me was to, um, you know, again, I was more comfortable behind the bar. So that felt authentic to me. Being a little bit quiet feels authentic to me, but also I was really holding myself back and I wasn't allowing myself to make these connections. I wasn't allowing, you know, um, I wasn't congruent. If what I wanted was deep, friendly, fun connections with these people. But what I was doing was sitting behind the bar, being really quiet and just being a wallflower, even if that was more comfortable, it wasn't totally congruent. It took a lot of self awareness and just realizing all of this first. And then it took a lot of courage for me to step from behind the bar and get my ass in the kitchen and joke around with them. Um, so I hope that makes sense. Knowing ourselves this deeply is so important because Aquarius invites us to be ourselves, really ourselves, to stop denying ourselves. Again, this is for the good of the whole planet. We spend so much time, we expertly try to escape ourselves or try to shape shift into some other version of ourselves, or we dampen ourselves and quiet ourselves, like me behind the bar. There's a process of checking in that I want to invite you to do. Check in with yourself 20 times a day. What are you denying yourself? What are you keeping yourself from? This could be because of generational trauma or cultural narratives that exist, fears and assumptions and expectations that we place on ourselves or that we feel placed upon us by others. What are you denying yourself? I was denying myself to be in the kitchen and be a dork. um, Being myself, fully showing up as myself. I wasn't allowing myself to do that. And again, I was more comfortable behind the bar, and I like want to really honor that. And I respect that for the former version of myself. And I was denying myself um, deeper friendships by doing so. You know, I was denying how fun I could be, how what I could really bring to the kitchen. What experiences and dreams and goals and desires and rights are you denying yourself? Where and why do you go into autopilot, go into like self preservation? Where and why do you distract yourself and escape from yourself? There's all kinds of ways we do this, and it's important to be aware of these things, even if you don't do the deep dive and really tune into these parts yet and like heal these parts of you yet. That'll happen when you're ready, right? Don't push it, but at least being aware of these parts of you that exist. I want to emphasize the generational trauma piece too. Um, Being aware of the ways that your family's stories keep you where you are or might cause you to deny yourself something different. There's an undoing that must happen. And I wrote undoing with a capital U. There's an undoing that must happen. We have to undo the facade that we may have created over the years. Undoing the facade requires self-awareness and radical self-acceptance. And I think self-acceptance comes from having so much compassion for ourselves and allowing how and what we are to be how and what we are without trying to change it, without criticizing it, just accepting that it is what it is and knowing like we can change. We have great capacity for change. We're ever flowing, right? We're ever evolving and changing forever, hopefully. And really accepting where you are and why that might be right now, whatever that looks like. So ask yourself, what kind of facades, what kind of masks do you wear? Where does the facade come from? Checking in, am I being fully myself? And if no, exploring what mask is on and why. Where does that mask come from? Some examples might be being extra sweet or quiet, or mousy when you're standing up for yourself, right? Sorry, but I asked for no mayo, and there's mayo on this. I'm sorry, but can you fix it? Right, being extra sweet or quiet when you have to stand up for yourself is an example of a mask. Being extra cold or hard in order to appear less vulnerable at times. Making jokes about things in order to appear less vulnerable is a type of mask. Hiding certain truths about who you are is a type of mask. And let me emphasize here that not all masks are bad. We shapeshift naturally and for really good reason, and sometimes for safety reasons, to preserve our safety. Sometimes we can't show our full selves for safety reasons. And being aware, it's just about awareness, being aware of the masks, being aware of any certain truth about yourself that you hide. Joking about things that aren't actually funny or laughing at jokes that you don't find funny. Trying to maintain mega professionalism is a mask. I had a client who was super cool. He was like a cool guy. He like always really sat back in his chair, and he came to therapy religiously, but he was a cool guy. And all he wanted was to connect with people and to have deep, meaningful relationships with people. And it took a while for us to get there. But I pointed out to him, I helped him realize that him being that cool and that casual about things was a little intimidating to me personally, and probably not just me, right? Like if you're trying to connect with people, but you are way too cool for school, it might be a little intimidating. Maybe that's just me. But this client, once he realized that, he was able to kind of manage that mask a little bit better, and choose when to kind of be a little bit more vulnerable. And it helped him realize that he didn't have to be that cool all the time. He didn't have to be that put together all the time, right? And in fact, being a little less put together helped him grow in his relationships and his connections with others. There are all kinds of nuanced little adjustments that we make to the face that we're showing to the world all day. It's natural. It's not necessarily a bad thing, right? We do it for self-preservation. We have to do it sometimes. And it's definitely something to be aware of and to manage when you're putting on some sort of face. Do you really have to put on that face? Can you be a little more authentic, a little more congruent? Again, congruence is key here. The goal, the work of this season is to make sure all of the faces we're using are as authentic as possible, as congruent with how we actually feel as possible. Aquarius season asks us to engage with the act of becoming yourself, molding yourself, naming yourself, and committing to yourself. You grow your home base every time you're able to claim and be claimed by the gifts that you came into this world with. How wonderful is that? And our soul knows this deeply. Our brain really doubts it. So be aware of that. Our soul knows that the more we're able to claim and be claimed by the gifts that we came into this world with, the more we're able to authentically and congruently show up as we are. Our soul knows that that's the jam. Like that's the shit that we came here to do. Our brain is like, that's not safe. What if somebody judges you? What if somebody rejects you? What if or it could be worse, right? Our safety could be in jeopardy with certain truths about who we are, unfortunately. And so our brain keeps us safe. Our soul wants to expand. Our soul wants to be more fully ourselves. So part of the invitation for you is to really work on shifting into experiencing more pride for who and what you are. Saying yes to the self usually involves others seeing us as eccentric, right? I spoke about this when I spoke about the Fool card last week. Saying yes to the self, to the soul, usually will involve others viewing you as eccentric, right? What would it be like to embrace that fully and humbly with humility and with pride? Again, this is for the good of the planet. Please show up more fully as you are. Show up more fully as you are with shamelessness and pride about who you are, because this benefits the whole planet. Honor your uniqueness. Embrace the weird things about you. Say that you think that this might be weird, or name the things that you feel like might be weird. Name the things that you feel a little anxious about. Embrace it. Allow yourself to be human. Allow yourself to be all of these things that you are. We are so fucking complex, and we are always changing. So, God, I wish all of us could do this work, right? Because I think all of us would feel a lot more safe. This is radical authenticity. This is radical acceptance for who and what you are, what you're coming to the table with at any given moment. One of my favorite quotes, I can't pronounce the person's last name. It came from a book called Think on These Things. I can't pronounce his last name, regrettably. But it's one of my favorite quotes of all time is remain simply what you are with great humility. And I fall back on that constantly. Another tip that my tarot teacher, Lindsay Mack, always says is to keep your eyes on your own paper, right? Throwback to middle school. Keep your eyes on your own paper. Don't compare yourself to others, and trust or hope that other people will keep their eyes on their own paper too. Just do your work. Just do your work. Take a breath and sink into who and what you are, and let go of the work of adjusting and putting on the masks and trying to be pleasant at all times, right? Let go of that work. Allow yourself to be a creature who is ever changing, engaging in the full depth of your experience and fearlessly allowing yourself to be whatever you are in each moment that you find yourself. You can find yourself over and over and over and over again. And I think that's beautiful. Now, to wrap up for this week, I have a quote from Marianne Williamson that beautifully transitions us from the week of Aquarius week 3, from the work of Aquarius week 3 into next week's work which is all about being of service to others, healing ourselves so that we can be of service to others, serving the collective and acknowledging our impact. So it's a long quote. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. God, I love that so much. I love that so much. And I know the word God can be loaded, it can mean a whole lot of different things for a whole lot of people. It can be triggering. And I hope that doesn't turn anyone off to this quote too much. You are a child of the universe. So much exists within you, and your playing small does not serve the world. We were born to make manifest the glory of all that exists in this universe, that it also exists within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. Just to kind of rephrase. So that's Aquarius week 3. Such important invitations this week, such important work to do this week. Aquarius is opposite Leo in the zodiac, and Leo is all about shamelessness, play, strength, and our inner child. And I love revisiting that in regards to how we are serving the collective. I love revisiting some of those themes with an Aquarius spin. You know what I'm saying? So good luck. Good luck, babe. Like, I am so passionate and so serious about like my calling to you, my begging you to show up in the full force of what you are, to embrace what you are, to take off some of the masks, to allow yourself to shine, because you doing so gives others permission to do so too. I really hope this served. Thank you so much for listening and for being here. It means the world to me. If you like what I'm doing, it would mean the world to me for you to comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know how this lands for you. Subscribe, maybe even share this work. It would mean the world to me. I really want to expand expansive astrology. I will see you here next week, next Sunday, for week 4 of Aquarius season, where again, we're going to be talking about how this relates to the collective, how healing ourselves benefits all of us. So until then, take really good care of yourself. I love you so much. Thank you again for being here. I will see you next time.